Are you missing out on these 10 essential brain training strategies? If you feel like you're doing everything right, but your bank account, your focus, and your results still don't reflect the future you want, then this video might be the moment everything clicks for you. Because the truth is, you don't have a money problem, a motivation problem, or even a luck problem. You have a brain training problem. Most people are walking around with a mind that has been trained for survival, not success. For scarcity, not abundance. For fear, not opportunity. And if you don't upgrade that mental software, you will keep repeating the same year over and over again, just with different calendars and bigger frustration. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 essential brain training strategies that millionaires, top performers, and the most prosperous people on the planet use, consciously or unconsciously, to create wealth, success, and inner peace. This isn't about think happy thoughts and wait for a miracle. This is about rewiring how your brain processes reality, decisions, and opportunities so that abundance becomes your default setting, not a rare exception. You'll recognize yourself in some patterns, and that might hurt a little, but it's the kind of pain that sets you free. So as you listen, I want you to imagine that this is a conversation between us, friend to friend, mentor to student, millionaire mind to soon-to-be millionaire mind. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you see what you couldn't see before. And when these ideas land, you will never again look at your thoughts, your habits, or your potential the same way. Let's start with the foundation, the brain training strategy that silently separates people who stay stuck from people who break through. Topic 1. Install the millionaire operating system in your brain. Imagine for a second that your mind is a smartphone, powerful, full of potential, capable of doing incredible things, but only as good as the software that's installed on it. Most people are walking around with a mind that's still running an old, slow, buggy operating system, full of fear, scarcity, self-doubt, and limiting beliefs about money and success. They try to load wealth and abundance on top of that, and then get frustrated when everything crashes. The truth is harsh but liberating. You don't have a money problem, you have a mental software problem. And until you update that, nothing truly changes, no matter how many books you read or videos you watch. Think about your own inner dialogue for a moment. When you see something you want, a course, a business idea, a trip, an investment, what is the very first thought that appears? Is it, I can't afford that? That's too hard. Who am I to do this? Or, people like me don't live that kind of life. If it is, that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. That's the old operating system speaking. Maybe you heard your parents arguing about money. Maybe you grew up watching people work hard and still struggle. Maybe your culture, your school, or your environment constantly repeated the message that dreaming big was dangerous and that wanting more was selfish. Your brain simply absorbed all of that and turned it into code. Now it runs that code automatically, without asking for your permission. Millionaires, on the other hand, are running a different system. Not because they were born special, but because at some point they started thinking in a radically different way. Look at someone like Oprah Winfrey. She came from poverty, trauma, and a reality that screamed, "You don't get to have a big life." Yet she trained her mind to ask different questions. What can I learn from this? How can I turn my pain into power? How can I serve at a bigger level? Before she had millions in her bank account, she had millions in her mindset. Her internal operating system was one of growth, possibility, and worthiness. Or take Elon Musk. While most people look at rockets and think impossible, too expensive, leave it to governments, his brain instantly goes to, how do we make this cheaper? How do we make this reusable? How do we make this available to humanity? That's not luck. That's mental software. So, what would it look like to install a millionaire operating system in your own brain? It starts with catching your default thoughts in real time. The next time you say, I can't afford this, pause. Feel that phrase as a piece of old code running. Millionaire minds almost never stop at I can't afford it. Instead, they instinctively ask, how can I afford this? What would need to be true for this to become possible? Or is this worth finding a way? One mindset shuts down your creativity and keeps you stuck. The other wakes up your imagination, your resourcefulness, your courage. Your brain is like a search engine. If you ask it a dead-end question, it gives you dead-end answers. If you ask it empowering questions, It starts scanning your world for solutions. Then there's identity. Listen carefully to the way you describe yourself in your own head. Do you tell yourself, "I'm bad with money, I'm lazy, I always mess things up, I never finish what I start"? Those aren't just harmless thoughts. They are lines of code. They become a mental contract your brain feels obligated to honor. A millionaire operating system is built on a very different inner identity. I'm learning to be excellent with money. I'm disciplined when it matters. I'm the kind of person who finishes what I start. I'm the kind of person who figures things out. At first, this will feel fake, like you're lying to yourself. But think of how companies build culture. A company like Apple trains people to obsess over design and innovation every single day. A company like Amazon trains people to focus on long-term value and customer obsession every single day. That repetition eventually becomes culture. Your repetition eventually becomes identity. Now, notice how loyal you've been to your old story. Many people defend their limitations more fiercely than they defend their dreams. They say, "It's the economy, it's my boss, it's my country, it's my past, it's my age," and they repeat these lines until they become reality. But in almost every country, every industry, every city, there are people who started with less than you and still built massive wealth. There are self-made millionaires who began in tiny apartments, refugee camps, broken homes, or in jobs that barely paid the bills. The world did not hand them a secret door. What changed was that they made an inner decision. I will not keep running this outdated program. That decision did not magically change their circumstances overnight, but it changed their behavior, their focus, their emotional state, and, over time, their results. You can start this mental upgrade right now in a very simple ways. Begin with your questions. When something goes wrong, instead of thinking, "Why does this always happen to me?" shift to, "What is this teaching me? How is this training me to become stronger, wiser, more capable? How can I use this?" High performers train their brains to extract lessons, not labels. Then, train your focus. Your attention is like a spotlight. Whatever you shine it on will dominate your inner world. If you constantly think about problems, debts, mistakes, and fears, your brain will filter reality to show you more of that. If you deliberately focus on opportunities, ideas, and the next small step you can take, your brain will begin to highlight that instead. Consider Warren Buffett. His genius is not just in numbers, it's in his mental software. When markets crash and everyone panics, his brain is trained to zoom out, stay calm, and look for long-term value. "Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful" is not just a clever quote. It's an operating system of patience, independence, and emotional control. You might not be managing billions, but you can absolutely train your brain to stay calm in chaos, to zoom out instead of overreacting, to ask, "What would my wiser, wealthier future self do in this situation?" That single question can stop you from making impulsive decisions that cost you years of progress. Installing a millionaire operating system in your brain is not about pretending you're rich while ignoring your current reality. It's about aligning your thoughts, your language, and your actions with the person you are committed to becoming. Every time you choose learning over excuses, responsibility over blame, courage over comfort, you are rewriting code. You might not see the change immediately, just like you don't see your phone updating line by line. But one day you wake up and realize you react differently, you think differently, you choose differently. You feel a new level of calm power inside of you, even before the money shows up. And when your inner world changes at that level, your outer world has no choice but to follow. Right here, right now, your brain is deciding which operating system it will keep running. Will it be the old one of fear and limitation, or the upgraded one of wealth, possibility, and power that quietly guides you toward the life you know you're meant to live? That choice is where your journey to true prosperity really begins. Topic 2. Rewire your brain's story about money and success. If your brain had a documentary playing on a loop about money and success, what would the title be? Money is stressful? Rich people are selfish? Success is for other people? Most people don't realize they're living inside a story they never consciously chose. That story was written by family, culture, and early experiences with failure and rejection. Your brain doesn't just record that story, it protects it. It will bend reality to make sure the story stays true, even if that story is strangling your chances at abundance. If you want a brain trained for wealth, you can't just stack new habits on top of an old narrative. You have to rewrite the script your mind believes about who you are and what is possible for you. Think about your earliest memories of money. Maybe you heard hushed arguments about bills late at night. Maybe you watched someone you love work tirelessly and still feel like it was never enough. Maybe you were told, "We can't afford that," so many times that wanting something now comes with a subtle ache in your chest. Over time, your brain wires money to emotions like anxiety, shame, pressure, or guilt. So years later, you say you want to be rich, but deep down, a part of you believes money means conflict, judgment, or becoming someone you don't want to be. Your conscious mind says, "I want abundance." But your subconscious whispers, "Abundance is risky," and the subconscious usually wins. Not because it wants to sabotage you, but because its primary job is to keep you safe according to that old script. Look at Sarah Blakely, the billionaire founder of Spanx. Before she built a billion-dollar company, she was selling fax machines door to door, hearing no all day long. What changed her brain wasn't just hard work, it was the story she was given about failure. Her father used to ask at the dinner table, "What did you fail at this week?" And if she had nothing to say, he seemed disappointed. Her brain learned that failure wasn't something to fear. It was proof that she was trying. While most people's inner story says, "If I fail, I'm a loser," her story became, "If I fail, I'm learning and getting closer." That difference in narrative creates a huge difference in courage, experimentation, and eventual wealth. Now, imagine the movie playing in your mind when you think about rich people. Do you secretly believe that wealthy people are cold, greedy, disconnected from real life? Do you picture them as people who stepped on others to get ahead, who lost their soul along the way? If your inner story says, "If I get rich, people will hate me, I'll be lonely, I'll turn into someone I can't respect," why would your brain ever allow you to become rich? It thinks it's protecting you from pain, rejection, and becoming the villain in your own story. That's why it's so powerful to consciously feed your mind with new examples of wealthy people who are generous, ethical, and deeply human. When your brain sees that money can amplify kindness instead of erasing it, the knot between wealth and bad person starts to loosen. So, how do you start rewriting this internal script? It begins with noticing it. You see someone driving an expensive car and your automatic thought is show off, or they probably did something shady. In that moment, instead of letting the thought slide, catch it. Ask yourself, where did that come from? Is that really my belief? Or is it a line I downloaded from someone else's fear? The moment you question a belief, it starts to crack. From there, choose a new story on purpose. Money in my hands is a force for good. Success expands my ability to help. I can be wealthy and deeply kind at the same time. At first, these lines might feel awkward, like wearing new shoes that haven't softened yet. That's okay. Your brain needs repetition to make them feel natural. Your new story becomes even more powerful when you attach emotion and imagery to it. Set aside a few minutes a day to vividly imagine a wealthy version of you who uses money beautifully. Picture yourself paying off your parents' debt, funding a local project, supporting a cause you care about, taking your family on a trip they never thought possible, paying your team well, and watching their lives transform. Feel the pride, the joy, the gratitude in your body as if it's happening right now. You're not doing this to escape your current reality. You're doing it to show your nervous system a different possible future, so it stops treating wealth as a threat. The brain doesn't just respond to facts, it responds to emotionally charged images. Think about how powerful brands use story. Starbucks doesn't just sell coffee, it sells a feeling. Disney doesn't just sell movies, it sells magic and family moments. Those stories shape behavior and loyalty. In the same way, the story you tell yourself about who you are and what success means shapes your behavior, your loyalty to your own dreams, and the emotional tone of your life. If your deepest script says, "I'm the kind of person who never quite makes it," you'll unconsciously sabotage yourself to stay consistent with that identity. If your script becomes, "I'm the kind of person who keeps growing, who figures things out, who is meant for a meaningful, prosperous life," your actions slowly bend to match that. Your brain follows the story you feed it. Here's a filter you can start using right now. When something goes wrong, ask yourself, if I already believed I was destined for a wealthy, meaningful life, how would I interpret this moment? A rejected proposal becomes feedback, not proof of failure. A slow month becomes a signal to improve your strategy, not a verdict on your worth. The external event is the same, but the inner meaning shifts from "this is the end" to "this is a lesson." When rewiring your brain's story about money and success is not about pretending your past didn't happen or denying real challenges. It's about claiming your role as the author from this point forward. Millionaires are not just people with larger bank accounts. They are people who carry a different narrative inside their heads about who they are, what they deserve, and what they can build. You cannot go back and rewrite your childhood scenes, but starting today, you can rewrite the ending. As your inner story shifts from fear and unworthiness to purpose, possibility, and permission, you'll notice your choices subtly change. You'll send the message, make the call, raise your prices, start the project. One decision at a time, you step out of the old movie and into a new one where success is no longer something distant you chase, but a natural expression of the person you are allowing yourself to become. Topic 3. Train your attention like a billion-dollar asset. If there is one thing that every millionaire, every high performer, and every truly prosperous person has in common, it is this. They do not treat their attention casually. They know their focus is the most valuable currency they own. Before money multiplies in a bank account, attention multiplies the right thoughts, actions, and opportunities. If your brain is constantly pulled in 1,000 directions, if your day disappears in notifications, scrolling, and random distractions, it is not a moral failure. It is simply an untrained brain doing what it has been conditioned to do: chase the next dopamine hit. To move into a life of real success and abundance, you must retrain your attention like an elite athlete retrains their muscles. Think about how the biggest companies in the world fight for your focus. Social media platforms, streaming services, news sites, and apps are all designed by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral experts to capture and keep your attention. Your brain is not weak, it is outnumbered. If you do nothing, your default brain becomes restless, impatient, and addicted to constant stimulation. That state is the enemy of deep work, long-term thinking, and wealth creation. You cannot expect to build a prosperous life on a mind that cannot stay with anything meaningful for more than a few minutes. Training your brain starts with reclaiming your right to decide where your attention goes. Look at someone like Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. When they were asked the most important factor in their success, they both gave the same answer: focus. Not genius, not luck. Focus. Their ability to direct their attention towards something important and keep it there, day after day, year after year, compounded into billions. When you train your brain to stay with what matters instead of chasing every distraction, you're stepping into that same principle, even if you're not dealing with millions yet. The habit is the same. The scale grows later. Ask yourself honestly, where does your attention actually go in a normal day? Not where you wish it went, but where it really goes. Do you start the morning by checking your phone and instantly opening a floodgate of other people's opinions and problems? Do you sit down to work on something important and then find yourself, 20 minutes later, in a rabbit hole of videos, messages, and random searches you don't even remember clicking on? Every time that happens, your brain is being trained to be more easily hijacked. The pathways of distraction get stronger, and the pathways of discipline, presence, and deep focus get weaker. The beautiful thing is that your brain is plastic. The same way it learned distraction, it can learn focus again. It doesn't happen with one big decision. It happens through small, repeated acts of directing your attention on purpose. You can train your brain by choosing one important task each day that you will give your full, undivided attention to for a set period of time. No notifications, no multitasking, no jumping between tabs. At first, your mind will resist. It will itch to escape. It will invent reasons to check something quickly. That discomfort is not proof that you can't focus. It is proof that your old wiring is being challenged. If you stay with it, even for a few more minutes than you normally would, you are already building a new pattern. Think of Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon, when it was just an online bookstore. He could have been distracted by trends, by doubts, by what everyone else thought was possible. Instead, he trained his attention on a few key questions. How do we serve the customer better? How do we scale? How do we think long-term in a world obsessed with short-term wins? Year after year, that disciplined attention created one of the most valuable companies on earth. Behind every overnight success story you see, there are usually years of someone showing up to the same focus, the same practice, the same vision, without letting their attention drift away at the first sign of boredom or difficulty. Your own prosperity may depend less on finding the perfect idea and more on your willingness to focus deeply on a good idea for long enough to let it grow. The brain is like a lens. Untrained, it scatters light everywhere. Trained, it becomes a laser that can cut through metal. What would happen if you treated your attention as a billion-dollar asset? Would you still give so much of it away to random videos, gossip, and constant comparison? Or would you start guarding it with boundaries, rituals, and conscious choices? Every time you pull your attention back from something meaningless and bring it to something that builds your future, you are saying to your brain, "This is what matters now." Over time, your mind learns to follow that command more easily. In a world that profits from your distraction, staying focused becomes a radical act of self-respect. Training your attention is not about becoming rigid or robotic. It's about becoming deliberate. It's about deciding that your dreams deserve more than whatever scraps of attention are left over after you've fed every distraction. When you begin to treat your focus as sacred, your days feel different. You end them with a quiet confidence instead of the dull ache of wasted time. Little by little, the results start to show up. Better work, deeper learning, stronger habits, more progress in less time. Wealth is not created by occasional bursts of inspiration. It is created by consistent, focused action over time. The sooner your brain learns to stay with what matters, the sooner your reality begins to reflect the depth of your potential. Training your attention is one of the most powerful brain strategies you can practice because it amplifies everything else. A millionaire operating system and an empowering money story become far more powerful when they are backed by a focused mind that actually follows through. This is how you turn your attention from something that gets stolen every day into one of your greatest assets on the path to success and prosperity. Topic 4. Use mental rehearsal to turn your brain into a success simulator. One of the most powerful brain training tools that millionaires, elite athletes, and top performers use every single day is something most people only dabble in for a few seconds and then forget. Mental rehearsal. Your brain is a simulator. It doesn't just remember the past, it also rehearses the future. The problem is that most people use this simulator against themselves. They mentally rehearse everything going wrong. They imagine being rejected, failing, being embarrassed, losing money, being judged. They picture worst-case scenarios so vividly that their body reacts as if those things are already happening. Their heart races, their energy drops, their confidence shrinks, and then they wonder why they hesitate, procrastinate, or sabotage their own progress. Their brain is simply obeying the script they've been rehearsing on repeat. Now imagine using that same simulator in your favor. Instead of mentally rehearsing fear, you rehearse success. Instead of replaying old scenes of failure, you play new scenes of courage, wealth, and competence. This isn't fantasy or denial. This is brain training. Neuroscience shows that when you vividly imagine yourself performing an action, the same brain regions light up as when you actually do it. That means your brain can be trained in advance. It can become familiar with confidence before the moment you need it. It can become familiar with wealth before the money arrives. It can become familiar with powerful decisions before you face them in real life. Think about Michael Phelps, one of the greatest swimmers in history. He used mental rehearsal obsessively. Night after night, he would close his eyes and imagine every detail of his race. The sound of the buzzer, the feel of the water, the motion of his arms, the way he would turn, the way his body would burn, and he would keep going anyway, the moment he touched the wall first. He trained his brain to run that script so many times that when something actually went wrong in a real race, like his goggles filling with water, his body knew exactly what to do. His brain had already rehearsed winning under pressure so many times that even chaos couldn't break the pattern. That is the power of mental rehearsal. Now translate that to money, career, and prosperity. Imagine an entrepreneur before a big pitch. The untrained brain replays fears. What if they say no? What if I forget what to say? What if I look stupid? They walk into the room already defeated. A trained brain does something different. The night before, They close their eyes and rehearse the meeting as if it were a movie. They see themselves walking in calmly, shaking hands, feeling grounded. They hear their own voice speaking clearly. They imagine answering questions with confidence, reading the room, connecting with the other person as a partner instead of a judge. They picture the moment when the investor nods, leans forward, and says, "This makes sense. Let's talk about next steps." By the time they walk into the real meeting, their brain has already been there many times. Familiarity replaces fear. Wealthy people do this with money decisions too, whether they call it visualization, strategy, or simply thinking things through. Before they move into a new business, make an investment, or scale a project, they rehearse it mentally. They imagine best-case and realistic-case scenarios, and they imagine themselves staying calm and resourceful in each one. They are not trying to control every detail. They are training their brain to feel at home in bigger levels of responsibility and risk. Contrast that with someone who suddenly gets a raise, a windfall, or a surge in income without any mental preparation. Their brain still carries the self-image of someone who isn't that kind of person. And often, without understanding why, they quickly find ways to get rid of the money or bring their life back to a familiar level. The mind sabotages what it hasn't rehearsed receiving. You can start using mental rehearsal today in very simple, practical ways. Before an important conversation, take a few minutes to imagine it going well. Before working on your business, imagine yourself focused and productive, actually completing what you started. Before checking your bank accounts, imagine yourself feeling calm and powerful, no matter what numbers you see, because you know you're in charge of your trajectory. Your brain doesn't need hours, it needs intensity and consistency. Just a few minutes of clear, emotionally charged mental rehearsal can begin to shift the way your nervous system responds in real life. Let's bring in an example from the business world. Think about companies like Apple or Tesla when they launch something completely new. The public sees the final reveal, the product on stage, the excitement and headlines. But behind that moment are countless hours of mental rehearsal in the minds of the leaders and key team members. They imagine the product in people's hands. Imagine how it will change behavior. Imagine the challenges and questions that will come and how they'll respond. They mentally live in a future where their idea is already normal, already part of everyday life. That kind of mental rehearsal shapes their decisions in the present. Their brain is anchored not in, "Will this work?" but in, "How do we bring this inevitable future into reality?" Your brain can do the same with your personal prosperity. Every night before you sleep, you can run a different kind of simulation. Instead of replaying what went wrong today, you can rehearse the person you are becoming. See yourself waking up energized, taking care of your body, sitting down to work with clarity and focus. Picture yourself saying no to distractions and yes to the actions that actually move your life forward. Imagine money flowing into your life through multiple channels: your job, your side project, your business, your investments. Imagine opening your banking app and seeing amounts that used to feel impossible, and instead of panicking or doubting, you feel calm, grateful, and responsible. You feel like someone who belongs in that level of reality. At first, a part of you might say, "This is silly, this is fake, this is pretending." But pause and ask yourself, haven't you already been rehearsing something without calling it that? Haven't you already rehearsed disaster, rejection, embarrassment, and disappointment in your own head many times? If your brain is capable of rehearsing negative scenarios so convincingly that they affect your body and decisions, then it is absolutely capable of rehearsing positive scenarios with just as much power. The question is not whether you are using mental rehearsal. The question is, what are you rehearsing? Over time, as you consistently rehearse success, something subtle but profound happens. Opportunities that used to scare you begin to feel like a natural next step. Rooms that used to intimidate you begin to feel like places where you belong. Numbers that used to trigger panic begin to feel neutral or even exciting. Your brain stops reacting like a stranger to the life you want and starts behaving like the mind of someone who is already living it. That shift is priceless. It makes it easier to take aligned risks, to stay in the game long enough for compounding to kick in, to keep going when the old version of you would have tapped out. Using mental rehearsal to turn your brain into a success simulator is not about escaping reality. It is about preparing your nervous system for a bigger reality so that when it arrives, you can hold it. Millionaires, champions, and creators of great companies don't just work in the outer world, they practice in the inner world first. When you join them in that practice, even quietly, in your own room, you are training your brain for a future where abundance, confidence, and prosperity feel less like a dream and more like the natural expression of who you have trained yourself to be. Topic 5. Master your emotional state to unlock peak performance. If your thoughts are the software of your brain, your emotions are the fuel. You can have the best strategies in the world, the clearest goals, and the smartest plans. But if your emotional state is constantly drained, anxious, resentful, or fearful, your brain simply will not execute at a high level. It will keep dragging you back to the same behaviors that feel safe, even if they keep you broke, stuck, or invisible. Millionaires and top performers do not live in perfect emotional states all the time, but they do something very different from the average person. They train their brain to come back to powerful states on purpose. They don't wait for the right mood to act. They use action, focus, and rituals to create the right mood. Think about a day when you woke up already feeling heavy. Maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe something went wrong yesterday. Maybe your mind instantly rushed to all the problems you need to solve. Notice what happens to your decisions in that state. You delay the important task. You avoid the challenging conversation. You scroll more. You eat whatever is easiest. You don't dream big in that emotional climate. You just try to survive. Now, think about a day when you were excited about something. Maybe you had a new idea, a small win, a compliment, a sense of momentum. In that state, hard things feel lighter. You send the message, you take the leap. You say yes to opportunities that scared you before. The external world hasn't changed that much, but your emotional state completely alters what your brain thinks is possible. Millionaires know this, whether they use scientific language or not. Look at someone like Richard Branson. He built an empire in multiple industries, from music to airlines to space travel. But one thing people always mention about him is his energy. He seems playful, curious, optimistic. Do you think that's an accident? He constantly puts himself in environments, routines, and conversations that keep his emotional state elevated. Adventure, exercise, time on his island, brainstorming with creative people, celebrating wins with his team. These are not just luxuries, they are emotional training. They keep his brain in a state where big ideas and bold moves feel natural instead of terrifying. Your own emotional state is being trained every day, whether you realize it or not. If you start your morning by consuming chaotic news, drama-filled social media, and messages full of demands, your brain learns that the world is dangerous, urgent, and exhausting. It will push you into reactive mode. If you end your day replaying everything that went wrong, criticizing yourself, and worrying about tomorrow, your nervous system never really gets to rest. Over time, your emotional set point drifts toward worry, frustration, and low-grade fear. In that state, talking about abundance and success feels like empty theory because your body is stuck in survival mode. So how do you start training your emotional state like a millionaire, even before you have the millionaire bank account? It begins with taking responsibility for the input your brain receives. You may not control every event, but you do have a say in what you repeatedly expose your mind and body to. That's why so many high performers are almost obsessive about their morning routines. Some meditate, some journal, some move their bodies, some visualize, some read something inspiring, some do all of the above. They're not doing it because it's trendy. They're doing it because they understand that the first emotional signal their brain receives in the morning can shape the whole day. Imagine starting your day by asking powerful questions instead of opening a flood of negativity. What am I grateful for right now, even if life isn't perfect? What is one thing I can do today that my future self will thank me for? How can I show up today like the wealthier, wiser version of me? As simple as they sound, questions like these shift the emotional tone inside your brain. Gratitude pulls your nervous system out of lack and into a sense of sufficiency. Future-focused questions pull your attention from regret to possibility. Your brain starts scanning for answers that match those emotions, and your day begins on a very different frequency. Consider companies like Google or Airbnb that invest in creating certain emotional climates in their offices. They design spaces with light, play, collaboration, and creativity in mind. They know that stressed, fearful brains make safe, small decisions. Relaxed, engaged, inspired brains invent billion-dollar ideas. The same is true in your personal life. If you constantly live in environments that drain you, messy spaces, toxic conversations, constant noise, it will be much harder to maintain a powerful emotional state. Training your brain for success may involve small, practical changes, like tidying your workspace, spending more time around people who uplift you, limiting conversations that are purely negative or gossip-filled, and carving out a little pocket of peace in your day that is non-negotiable. One of the most overlooked aspects of emotional training is how you talk to yourself when things go wrong. Everyone has bad days, slow results, failed attempts. The difference between someone who eventually becomes wealthy and someone who stays stuck is often in what they say to themselves in those moments. A stuck brain says, "Of course, I'm such a failure. This always happens to me. What's the point?" That self-talk doesn't just describe the emotion, it deepens it. A trained brain might still feel disappointed or frustrated, but the inner voice sounds more like, "Okay, this hurts, but I can handle this. What can I learn? What will I do differently next time? This doesn't define me, it's just part of the process." That kind of self-talk doesn't magically erase pain, but it keeps the door open for growth, and the emotional state recovers faster. Think about someone like J.K. Rowling, who went from living on welfare to becoming one of the most successful authors on the planet. She experienced rejection from multiple publishers, personal struggles, and moments where giving up would have been easy. What kept her going? Yes, there was the story she believed in, but there was also the emotional resilience she cultivated. She didn't let temporary rejection become a permanent identity. She continued showing up to the blank page again and again, even when her outer reality did not yet confirm her inner vision. That is emotional state training in action, feeling doubt, fear, and sadness, but not letting them make the final decision. Your emotional state will never be perfect, and that's okay. The goal is not to be happy all the time. The goal is to become emotionally fit. Just like physical fitness doesn't mean you never feel tired, emotional fitness doesn't mean you never feel low. It means you bounce back faster. It means you know how to generate energy, calm, and clarity when you need it most. It means you stop letting every mood dictate your actions. When your brain learns that it can experience uncomfortable emotions without collapsing, it stops panicking every time you step out of your comfort zone. Suddenly, doing the scary thing becomes possible, because fear is no longer a stop sign, just a signal. As you train your emotional state, you will notice something powerful. Opportunities that once felt overwhelming now feel exciting. Conversations that once triggered defensiveness now feel like growth moments. Challenges that once made you shrink now activate a part of you that says, "I was built for this." From that place, your decisions around money, career, and relationships naturally become wiser, braver, and more aligned with your highest potential. Mastering your emotional state is not an optional extra on the road to success. It is one of the core brain training strategies that explain why some people rise under pressure while others crumble. When you learn to generate inner stability, joy, and determination regardless of temporary circumstances, you become the kind of person that wealth, opportunity, and prosperity feel drawn to. Topic 6. Turn tiny habits into automatic wealth programming. Your brain isn't changed by what you plan to do someday. It's changed by what you do over and over again, almost without thinking. That's why people can read books about wealth, binge content about success, and still feel stuck. Their daily habits are teaching their brain the opposite of what their mouth is saying. Millionaires don't just set big goals. They build small, repeatable patterns that make those goals more and more inevitable. They train their brain so that actions that create wealth feel normal, not heroic. If you want your mind to work for your prosperity instead of against it, you need to stop depending on motivation and start using tiny habits as mental programming. Look at your day as if you were observing a stranger's life. When you wake up, what's the first thing you grab? Your phone or your intention? When you feel stressed, do you numb out or lean in? When you have an extra half hour, do you default to distraction or to building something? Each of those moments is a vote. Your brain is watching and learning. Oh, when we're tired, we give up. When we're anxious, we escape. When we're bored, we scroll. It then automates those choices so you don't even think about them. But imagine if, little by little, you rewired those links. Stress could become a cue to grab a notebook and search for solutions. Boredom could become a cue to open a book, a course, or a document related to your goals. Over time, your brain would associate these emotional triggers with growth instead of avoidance. Look at the routines of people who build extraordinary results. Warren Buffett spends hours every day reading and thinking. Not once in a while, every day. That habit steadily shaped how his brain perceives value, risk, and opportunity. Kobe Bryant became legendary not because of what he did in front of cameras, but because of the quiet mornings in empty gyms, repeating the same movements thousands of times. Both men built identities out of repetition. Their brains stopped asking, "Will I practice today?" and began assuming, "Of course, this is what we do." That's the level you want with your wealth habits. In money and career, prosperous people often have small routines that most outsiders never see. Automatically moving a percentage of their income into investments, reviewing their numbers each week, blocking time for deep work on their most important projects, reaching out regularly to mentors or key contacts, learning something new in their field every single day. None of that looks glamorous in the moment, but each repetition tells the brain, we are builders, we are investors, we are long-term thinkers. Eventually, the identity behind the habit becomes stronger than any temporary feeling of laziness or fear. The trap is trying to change everything at once. Maybe you've done this. You decide from now on, you'll wake up early, meditate, read, work out, build a business, eat perfectly, and also become a financial genius, all starting Monday. Your nervous system panics, and within a short time, you're back to old patterns, feeling like you failed again. It's not that you're weak, it's that your brain experiences extreme change as a threat. Millionaire-level brain training respects that. It uses small, sustainable changes that are almost too easy to refuse. So instead of demanding a total life makeover, ask yourself, what tiny, repeatable habit would my future wealthy self be grateful I started today? Maybe it's 10 pages of a good book on money or mindset. Maybe it's setting up an automatic transfer of even a small amount into an investment or savings account. Maybe it's 20 focused minutes a day on your side project with everything else turned off. Maybe it's a nightly check-in where you write down what you did that moved you forward, even if it seems small. These actions don't impress your ego, but they quietly impress your brain. They start forming a new story. I am someone who shows up. I am someone who learns. I am someone who takes care of my money. Environment is a silent architect of habit. If your phone sleeps next to you, odds are your first habit in the morning will be checking it. If your workspace is messy, full of distractions, your habit will be procrastination. Wealthy people often design their physical surroundings to support their mental programming. They keep books visible. They keep tools for their craft ready. They keep reminders of their goals where their eyes naturally go. At the same time, they make unhelpful behaviors a bit harder, turning off notifications, moving tempting apps off the main screen, creating tech-free zones or hours. None of this is about perfection. It's about quietly nudging your brain in the direction of your future. There will absolutely be days when you don't feel like doing your small habit. That's normal, but those days are where the real rewiring happens. When you show up anyway, even if you do a smaller version, you send a powerful signal. Our commitments matter more than our moods. You don't have to be flawless. You just have to be consistent enough that your brain stops negotiating each time. Over time, the question shifts from, should I do this? To, when in my day will I do this? That's the moment a habit becomes part of who you are. Then, one day, you'll look back and notice that you think differently about money, time, and yourself. You'll feel slightly uncomfortable wasting a whole evening on distraction because your standards have changed. You'll naturally look for ways to grow your income, protect your money, and build assets because your brain is now programmed for creation instead of survival. That didn't come from one big breakthrough. It came from an army of tiny habits, marching in the same direction day after day. Turning tiny habits into automatic wealth programming won't give you fireworks every morning, but it will give you something far more powerful, a mind that quietly builds your future even on the days when you feel ordinary. And that, over years, is exactly what separates those who dream about prosperity from those who actually live it. Topic 7. Surround your mind with environments that make success inevitable. One of the most underestimated brain training strategies is also one of the simplest to explain. Your environment is programming you every single day. Not just the physical space around you, but the people you talk to, the content you consume, the conversations you repeat. Your brain is a sponge that never stops absorbing. The question is not, am I being programmed? But who and what is doing the programming? Millionaires understand this. They do not leave their environment to chance. They engineer it to whisper and sometimes shout messages of growth, possibility, and excellence. Think for a moment about the spaces you spend most of your time in. Your bedroom, your office, your commute, your lunch breaks, your evenings. Do these spaces encourage clarity or confusion, focus or distraction, hope or resignation? A cluttered room full of unfinished projects, overdue bills, and constant noise tells your brain, we are overwhelmed, behind, and out of control. Over time, your mind begins to match that story. On the other hand, a space where you see your goals written, your next actions visible, your tools ready, and your environment reasonably calm sends a very different signal. We are builders. We are in motion. We are capable. Your external world becomes a mirror that your nervous system reads all day long. Now layer people on top of that. One of the most powerful brain training forces in your life is the emotional climate of the people you spend time with. If you are surrounded by constant complaining, gossip, drama, and excuses, your brain gets used to that as normal. Even if you don't agree with what's being said, your nervous system absorbs the tension, the helplessness, the nothing really changes attitude. It slowly becomes harder to hold big visions in that atmosphere because your brain wants to fit in. But when you interact with people who talk about ideas, solutions, opportunities, and personal growth, your mind relaxes into a different normal. Dreams stop sounding ridiculous and start sounding reasonable. Wealth stops feeling like a fantasy and starts feeling like a skill. Look at the way companies like Google, Tesla, or Apple gather talent. They don't just hire smart individuals. They create clusters of people who challenge and stretch each other. In those environments, big thinking is not weird. It's expected. Being curious, ambitious, and creative is the default setting. Imagine what that does to a brain over years. Your own life may not look like a tech campus, but the principle is the same. Who you put around you is one of the most important decisions you make for your mind. Sometimes the biggest upgrade you can give your brain is simply reducing the time you spend in conversations that shrink you and increasing the time you spend listening to, reading from, or talking to people who think bigger. This doesn't mean your closest people have to be rich or famous. It means they are oriented toward growth, honesty, and responsibility. A friend who is building a small side business, reading, trying, failing, and trying again can be a more powerful influence on your brain than a cynical millionaire who hates life. Your nervous system feels the difference between energy that pulls you forward and energy that quietly drags you down. You can also build a virtual environment when your physical one isn't supportive yet. Podcasts, audiobooks, interviews, biographies of people who have created the kind of life you want. These are ways of letting your brain marinate in higher-level thinking, even if nobody around you understands your dreams yet. Notice the digital environment you're living in. Your social media feed is not neutral. It's a reflection of what you've paid attention to. If you keep clicking on drama, outrage, and mindless entertainment, the algorithm will feed your brain a steady diet of that until it becomes the background noise of your life. But if you start deliberately engaging with content about business, mindset, health, creativity, and wealth, your digital world slowly reshapes itself. Your phone can become a portal to distraction or a portal to elevation. Every follow, every click, every search is a vote. Creating an environment that trains your brain for success doesn't mean you abandon everyone from your past or become rigid about having a perfect minimalist office. It means you become conscious. You realize that every object, every conversation, every repeated complaint, every inspiring quote, every book on your nightstand is doing something to your mind. From that awareness, you start making small, intentional changes, clearing one corner of your space so it feels like a command center instead of chaos, limiting certain draining interactions, inviting more uplifting voices into your day, surrounding yourself with reminders of the life you are building instead of the life you are trying to escape. Over time, something powerful happens. You no longer have to fight so hard against your old patterns because your environment is quietly fighting for the new ones. Your room nudges you to focus. Your digital world nudges you to learn. Your relationships nudge you to grow. Your brain, instead of swimming upstream against constant negativity and clutter, begins to flow with a current of support. Change stops feeling like a constant battle of willpower and starts feeling like the most natural thing in the world. And that is what millionaires and deeply successful people understand. They don't just train their minds inside their heads, they build worlds around them that make those minds almost impossible to ignore. Topic 8. Upgrade your self-image to match your future wealth. There's a silent rule running your life right now. You will never consistently live far above the image you hold of yourself. Your self-image is like a thermostat. You can push yourself with motivation, hustle hard for a while, even have a lucky breakthrough. But if deep down you still see yourself as average, the one who never quite makes it, or not that kind of person, your brain will quietly pull you back to what feels familiar. If you want lasting prosperity, not just temporary spikes, you have to change the way you see you. Think about the times you tried to level up. You started a diet, a savings plan, a business idea, a new habit. At first, you were on fire. Then, almost without noticing when it happened, you stopped. You got busy. You lost focus. Something came up. On the surface, it looked like life got in the way. But underneath, something else happened. Your old self-image didn't recognize this new behavior as you, so it nudged you back to the old baseline. Your brain is obsessed with identity. It wants you to act in a way that matches the story you believe about yourself, even if that story is painful. Look at people who create massive success from ordinary beginnings. Many of them talk about identity long before they talk about money. Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for $10 million years before he was famous and carried it in his wallet. It wasn't about the paper. It was about training his mind to see himself as someone whose work could be worth that much. Self-made millionaires often say things like, "I started acting like the person I wanted to become before the world saw me that way." They didn't pretend they were rich. They behaved like somebody who respected time, honored commitments, learned constantly, and took bold but intelligent risks. That's self-image in action. To upgrade your own, start by paying attention to the labels you attach to your name. Listen for the phrases that begin with "I am," even if you only say them in your head. I am bad with money. I am always late. I am shy. I am not disciplined. Those might feel like innocent descriptions, but your brain treats them as instructions. It organizes your behavior to keep those statements true so you can feel like yourself. If you want different results, you need different labels. Not fake ones like "I am a billionaire" when you're not, but bridge identities. I am becoming smarter with money. I am learning to be disciplined. I am the kind of person who finishes what I start. You're not denying your past. You're choosing your future identity. Your brain will initially resist. It will bring up evidence. All the times you quit, overspent, avoided. That's okay. Instead of arguing with it, you collect new evidence. Every time you make a wiser money choice, study instead of scroll. Follow through on something you said you would do. Pause and say inside, "This is like me. This is who I am now." You're linking action to identity. Do this enough, and those behaviors stop feeling like trying really hard and start feeling like you're normal. That's when it gets easier. Think of big brands. Apple sees itself as a company that thinks different and obsesses over design and experience. That identity shapes everything, from how they design products to how they answer emails. If they suddenly put out something clumsy and cheap, it wouldn't just hurt sales, it would feel wrong to who they are. When you begin to see yourself as a builder, a learner, a creator of value, certain choices start to feel wrong too. Wasting entire weeks avoiding your goals, staying in situations with no growth, constantly sabotaging your own progress, those behaviors begin to clash with the person you're becoming. Visualization becomes a powerful tool here when you use it to see yourself, not just your bank account. Imagine walking, talking, deciding as the wealthier, wiser you. How do you react to bad news? How do you respond when someone doubts you? How do you manage money? Panic or calmly decide? How do you spend your time? See yourself opening your laptop and working with focus. See yourself saying no to what drains you and yes to what builds you. See yourself sitting with numbers, not as an enemy, but as information you can learn to master. The more often you mentally rehearse this version of you, the more familiar it feels. Your brain stops treating it as fantasy and starts accepting, this could be us. You will probably feel like an imposter at some points. You'll walk into rooms, take on projects, talk about goals that your old self-image was never invited to. That feeling doesn't mean you're fake. It often means you're expanding. The key is not to run back to safety. Breathe, ground yourself, and let your actions catch up with your new identity. Every time you show up anyway, shaky but present, you are teaching your brain that this higher level is safe. As your self-image upgrades, your decisions begin to change almost automatically. You stop needing to convince yourself to do what's good for you. It starts to feel obvious. You're less impressed by shortcuts and more committed to compounding. You become strangely allergic to your own excuses. Protecting your time, your focus, your health, and your finances stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like self-respect. Upgrading your self-image to match your future wealth is not about arrogance or thinking you're better than anyone. It's about finally seeing yourself as capable, worthy, and responsible enough to live the life that's been whispering to you all along. When who you are on the inside lines up with the success you're building on the outside, your brain stops dragging you backward and starts pushing you forward. That's when progress stops feeling like a constant fight and starts feeling like a natural expression of who you really are becoming. Topic 9. Think like an investor. Train your brain for long-term prosperity. One of the biggest differences between a brain wired for scarcity and a brain wired for wealth is time horizon. A scarcity mindset is obsessed with right now, quick relief, instant gratification, immediate comfort. A wealthy mindset thinks like an investor. What will this choice do to my life 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10? The funny thing is, the actions don't always look that different on the surface. The difference is in the intention and in the ability to wait. If you want real prosperity, you must train your brain to fall in love with long-term rewards, not just short-term hits of pleasure. Look at how the richest people on the planet think. Warren Buffett often talks about his favorite holding period for an investment: forever. He doesn't panic when a stock dips for a week. He looks at the underlying value over years. Jeff Bezos built Amazon with a clear willingness to look bad in the short term, losing money early on to dominate the market later. They trained their brains to tolerate temporary discomfort for future advantage. Contrast that with how most people think about money. Can I afford this payment this month? Instead of, is this helping or hurting my future freedom? Does this feel good right now? Instead of, does this move me toward the life I actually want? Your brain has been conditioned by a world that offers instant everything. Instant messages, instant food, instant entertainment, even instant opinions. That constant stream trains your nervous system to expect fast rewards. When results take longer, your brain screams, "This isn't working. Quit." That's why people abandon good strategies too early. They start a business, a channel, a skill, an investment. But if they don't see fireworks in a few weeks or months, they call it a failure. The truth is, many of the things that could change your life the most need time to compound. Your brain has to be trained to stay in the game long enough to experience that compounding. Think of someone who commits to investing a small amount every month for years. At the beginning, it feels almost pointless. The numbers don't look impressive. They might even think, what difference does this make? But over time, as compound interest kicks in, the growth curve changes shape. It starts slowly, then suddenly accelerates. The same is true for skills, reputation, relationships, content creation, health, and every meaningful area of life. The brain that understands this is patient and persistent. The brain that doesn't keeps jumping from one thing to the next, forever starting over and wondering why nothing lasts. To train your own mind to think like an investor, you have to start asking different questions. Instead of, what do I feel like doing right now? Ask, what would my future self thank me for today? Instead of, will this pay off this week? Ask, is this part of a strategy that pays off over time if I keep going? When you feel that pull to quit something just because it's slow, ask, is this truly not working, or am I just uncomfortable with the pace? Sometimes you really do need to pivot. But a lot of the time, what you need is not a new plan, but a new level of patience. Look at companies like Netflix. They didn't start as the giant streaming platform we know. They began by mailing DVDs. They made a series of long-term bets on the internet, on original content, on a new way of watching. None of those bets paid off overnight. If the leadership had only cared about looking good each quarter, they might have killed the most important innovations too soon. In your own life, long-term thinking might look like working on a project that no one understands yet, building a skill that doesn't pay big money immediately, planting seeds in relationships that won't pay off for years. Your brain needs to learn to hold the vision beyond the current moment. One practical way to train this is to create rituals that stretch your time horizon. Journal not just about what you want this month, but what you want your life to feel like 3 years from now. Picture your ideal day in detail. Then ask, what are 3 small, consistent actions that, if done for 3 years, would make that day normal? Suddenly, sending 1 email, reading 1 chapter, recording 1 video, or investing 1 small amount doesn't feel so insignificant. It becomes a brick in the foundation of a much bigger structure. Your brain stops chasing fireworks and starts respecting bricks. Be honest about how often you've sabotaged yourself because of impatience. Maybe you were building an audience and stopped posting just as things were starting to catch. Maybe you were learning a skill and quit right after you passed the awkward beginner phase. Maybe you were improving your finances and then blew your progress on an impulse purchase because I deserve it. That phrase, I deserve it, can be a trick your brain plays when it's uncomfortable with waiting. You absolutely deserve joy and treats and rest, but you also deserve the future you promised yourself. Thinking like an investor means sometimes saying, I deserve more than this quick hit. I deserve the long-term win. When you train your brain for long-term prosperity, you experience a different kind of peace. You're no longer frantic about every up and down. You stop treating every slow week as a crisis. You know what you are building, and you know that consistency beats intensity. That doesn't mean you sit back and hope. It means you keep adjusting, improving, and learning while still respecting the timeline of growth. You're playing a bigger game. In the end, thinking like an investor isn't just about money. It's about who you're becoming. Every time you choose long-term gain over short-term comfort, your self-respect grows. You start to trust yourself. You start to believe, not just hope, that your future will be richer, in every sense, than your present. That belief changes how you show up today. And when your daily actions are driven by a vision that stretches years ahead, you are no longer at the mercy of moods and trends. You are quietly, steadily training your brain to create a life that compounds in value long after today's impulses have passed. Topic 10. This is the moment your future self has been waiting for. If you've come this far, it's not by accident. Something in you is done with living on autopilot. Something in you is tired of watching other people break through while you secretly wonder, why not me? And maybe, for the first time, you're starting to see that the distance between where you are and where you want to be is not luck, not magic, not some secret door only a few chosen ones get to see. It's brain training. It's daily alignment. It's the quiet, powerful decision to stop letting your old programming run your life and to start becoming the conscious creator of your inner world. Think about everything we've walked through together. You've seen how your brain has been running an operating system you didn't choose, built from other people's fears, limitations, and stories about money, success, and what's realistic. You've seen how your attention has been pulled in 1,000 directions, how your imagination has been hijacked to rehearse disaster instead of success, how your emotional state, your tiny habits, your environment, your self-image, and your time horizon have all been shaping your reality more than any motivation ever could. None of that was meant to make you feel guilty. It was meant to give you power, because once you see the code, you can change it. Imagine your future self watching you from 5 years ahead. Really picture them for a moment. Where are they living? How do they walk into a room? What kind of work do they do? How do they talk about money, about opportunities, about themselves? Are they still apologizing for wanting more, still shrinking to make others comfortable, still trapped in the same loops of someday? Or are they calm, focused, generous, confident, building and enjoying a life that once felt impossible? Now ask yourself a simple, uncomfortable question. Is the way you've been thinking, deciding, and acting recently actually leading you toward that version of you, or keeping you orbiting the same old point? This is where most people look away. They feel the truth of that question and then rush back into distraction because staying present with it hurts. But you're still here. That means you're different. It means you're ready to use that discomfort as fuel instead of a reason to freeze. The decision in front of you is not, do I want to be rich or do I want success? You already know the answer to that. The real decision is, am I finally willing to think, act, and train my brain like someone who is on that path for real? Not in theory, not just when you're inspired, consistently, especially when no one is watching. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time to start. Life will always be a little messy. There will always be bills, responsibilities, doubts, tired days, people who don't get it. Millionaires and deeply successful people did not wait for ideal conditions to train their minds. They started where they were, with what they had, and they kept going long after the initial excitement faded. They chose to believe that their brain was their greatest asset and treated it that way. You have access to that same power. The question is not whether your mind can change. Neuroscience already proved it can. The question is whether you will direct that change or let randomness, fear, and other people's agendas keep doing it for you. You don't have to become a completely different person overnight. That's not how real transformation works. You simply need to begin living a little more each day as the person you've glimpsed in your imagination. When you catch an old thought, I can't. That's not for me. What's the point? You pause and choose a new one on purpose. When you feel your attention drifting into endless distraction, you gently bring it back to one meaningful action. When fear tells you to rehearse everything going wrong, you dare to rehearse what it would look like if things actually worked. When your emotions crash, you reach for tools instead of only for escape. When you're tempted to abandon your habits because results are slow, you remember, this is compounding. This is wiring. This is training. Think for a moment about all the people who will never hear messages like this, who will never question the stories they were given, who will spend decades fighting the same battles in their mind and calling it just the way I am. Then realize you are not one of them. You are literally changing the trajectory of your life by changing what your brain believes is possible. That doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your health, your relationships, your children, the way you show up in every room you enter. When you upgrade your thoughts, your self-image, and your habits, you upgrade the future of everyone who will ever be touched by your existence. You don't need anyone's permission to begin. You don't need a certificate that declares you ready. The very fact that you are seeking this kind of content, that you stayed with these ideas, that you feel that mix of fear and excitement in your chest right now, this is your sign. This is your brain standing at a doorway, waiting for your instruction. You can tell it, okay, that was interesting, and go back to business as usual. Or you can tell it with calm determination. From today on, we think differently. We act differently. We are becoming someone new. So take a breath. Put your hand on your heart if you want to anchor this, and quietly make a promise to yourself that no one else has to hear, but your brain will never forget. You will no longer treat your mind like an enemy or a mystery. You will treat it like a partner, like a powerful machine that responds to what you feed it, repeat to it, and rehearse inside it. You will fall off track sometimes. You will have days where you feel small again. That's okay. The difference now is that you know what's happening, and you know how to come back. One day, sooner than you think, you'll look around at your life and realize that the millionaire brain you used to imagine is no longer something outside of you. It's how you think. It's how you choose. It's the way you move through the world. And the outer results, more opportunities, more income, more freedom, more impact, will simply be the echo of a decision you made in moments like this one. To stop waiting for your mind to change by accident and to start training it, deliberately, for the success and prosperity you were always meant to live. If this episode woke something up in you, don't let it fade when you close this video. Hit subscribe and turn on the notifications so your brain keeps getting fed with content that reinforces this new identity you're building. If any topic hit you hard, drop it in the comments and tell me which brain training strategy you're committing to start today. Writing it down is already part of your reprogramming. If this helped you, like the video so the algorithm knows this is the kind of message more people need, and share it with that friend, coworker, or family member who you know is right on the edge of a breakthrough. You're not just supporting this channel when you do that. You're helping create a circle of people who think bigger, act braver, and attract more prosperity together.